Hello, and welcome to the NoFruitPodcast.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. This is Maurice.
And this is Kafa.
We thank you for tuning in today. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode.
Hello, everyone.
Hey, y'all.
Hey, y'all. I hope that you're doing very well today. Now, let's get to the show. Before we do that, though, I want to make sure that you're fit. Kafa, what is fit?
Fit is for Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. So check us out on all of those.
Right. Make sure that you also, no matter what platform you're on, make sure that you share our episode for today, and make sure you subscribe and get someone else to subscribe. Not just share, but have them subscribe too.
That's right. Each one, teach one.
Right. So, y'all, our topic for today is about something that I've been listening to for the last couple of weeks. More importantly, they've been talking about it very heavily within the last 2 days. One of the topics, or I guess coming from a place of being of middle age now, is I'm listening to people that are half my age, reference to the seasoned saints, not listening to them in church. And now that I'm in this middle ground, I hear their argument, but I also understand the senior saint side of maybe not listening to them to some degree. So, and Kyle, do you want to jump in on this? You want me to
You
keep
go
going?
ahead and get
All
started.
right,
I wasn't
right.
privy to some of that. So
Okay,
I
so-
just listened for a moment,
all right,
like everybody else.
So, for those of you who have been nurtured from a seed in the church, sometimes we have I don't want to say a fight. It's not a fight, but sometimes we feel as though we're not being heard by the officers and members of the church, the pastor, and sometimes we feel as though that they are parenting us. It's like, hey, we hear enough from our parents at home. Sometimes we want to be heard here at the church. We should have a say also. And at this time of unrest within our culture, being America, I do believe that people feel as though that they should be a little more apart. I believe they feel as though they should have a seat, not behind the table or outside the table. They feel as though they need to be at the table, especially when you have these moments of unrest being led by the young people. And that if you want them to be a part of your organization, if you want them to be more involved in church, and some people, I've heard them say, if you want me to give up my tithes and offerings, you need to listen to me. So, and then the pushback is, you're not experienced yet. You need to sit back and learn. You have not gone through what I've gone through. You have not seen what I've seen. You need to study the Bible a little bit more. You're doing good, but, and then that's where it all breaks down. Is that but. So for myself, I'm just going to give my own personal experiences at this moment. I don't think I wanted my voice to be heard necessarily. I didn't fight for that. because I guess there was a part of me that felt as though, hey, I do have some more things to learn. But I think for myself, I had multiple lanes that I was in where I think I was being heard. I wasn't some of those young people that were sitting in the back row or even the middle, the sanctuary. I was one of those young people that were sitting in the front. I was one of those young people that was being exalted, quote unquote. So I don't feel as though I was marginalized in that place. Now, when it had come down to those that were, I guess, quote unquote, parents to me, whether it was church aunts, church uncles, church grandparents, church godmothers, I don't feel as though they shut me up. And I guess that's because I was able to articulate in some ways how I felt, what was going on. Also, there were some cases where I might have known a little bit more because of my experiences. And I'm only talking about those young people, quote unquote, from the ages of 18 to 25. I'm only talking about that age group right now because these are the ones that I'm really hearing a lot from. So that's my experience. That's my take on it. Kyle, you got anything to say? I don't want to keep going on. You got anything to say?
I mean, I guess my experience is, somewhat different than yours. Again, I wasn't raised from a seed, as you said, in the church. I joined the church when I had entered, I guess, middle school or high school, all on my own. My parents didn't go there. I did have, it was actually my grandmother's aunt's church, if you will. So it was kind of the family church that I was aware of and knew about. So she was kind of one of the only persons that I knew that had gone to church from my family. So I kind of tagged along here and there, and I fell in love with it. So that's kind of how I kind of started in the church. So when I became 18, life shifted and changed because I went to college. But I went to college close enough that I still could get on a bus, a train, and walk a little bit to get to church. So not every Sunday, but most, I still did that. Not every Friday for choir rehearsal, I did that. So I tried to continue on. I think I went to a very small church. So what my opinion was important to some. To others, it may not have been. I can recall prior to 18, some of the elders at the church, you're a child, you're supposed to sit in the back, you're supposed to be quiet, you're not supposed to eat, chew gum, you're supposed to sit there and do whatever until we have a program for children, and then we call you up. And then we kind of parade you around, and everybody's so happy and look at what the little kids say. And, we told them to say this, and wasn't that so cute? But not really having a connection with God, not really having a connection with Jesus. It was more so kind of superficial in nature, I say. Not going too deep in things. So that was my upbringing. I think once I turned 18, again, doing things a little different. I was teaching Sunday school by then. I was on the choir. I was, in the usher board and leading those things by either being a president or a treasurer or something of the matter. So, again, church is small, but our church was a lot different. We had a very bountiful, I guess, youth ministry or youth church, but most of us did not have parents in the church. It was just your friend kind of led another friend, and then that friend brought another friend, and then, hey, this is a nice place to come and hang out. The adults that I can remember during this time period that you're speaking of, that 18 to 25, for myself, the adults wanted to feed us. They felt that that's what's going to bring the kids to church. Like, we going to give them a hot breakfast.
Oh, okay. I was saying, what you mean by feed?
They wanted to feed us, Your buddy was
Right.
like, they don't need cereal, because first they was giving us cereal. No, they need a hot breakfast. They need some eggs and some pancakes and some home fries and all that stuff. So that would draw kids to church.
Right.
Right. Some of them would just come for the hot food and for the Sunday school, and they would bounce. They wouldn't stay for morning worship, but they would be there for that part.
Right.
So going up to 25, again, graduating from college, and then having my own spot, all that kind of stuff, still being a part of the church. I did see a change.
Right.
There was now shifting from the youth department to the young adult department.
Right.
And those individuals were faced with different challenges, but still that particular church that we grew up in still looked at us as youth.
Right.
Those between 18 and 25 are, in the world's eyes, looked at as adults,
right.
and they are able to make decisions, and they're able to speak their mind. They're able to get jobs and houses and cars and have children and all of those things. But within that church, you were still looked at as a youth.
Right.
You were still looked at as a child. You weren't quite there yet. And I started to question. I remember going to a meeting and started trying to understand, like, well, what is this? Like, when do I become an adult? And they said, well, youth goes up until 40.
Right. Yep.
And I was just like, well, then some people are grandparents at the age of 40.
Right.
You know what I mean? I mean, my mom had me at 18. I mean, my grandmother was just a couple years, so there are grandparents at that stage. And I just felt as though that was kind of off to be still considered youth at the age of 39.
Right.
As a 30, when I was 39, was I still connected to the youth? Do I still feel as though I could reach out to them? But at that time, I had a child of my own.
Right.
I had two. So, but I had a job, a house,
right.
cars, and so many other things that I didn't feel as though that I could, on an even level, relate to someone who was 18.
Right.
I didn't feel as though I was on an even level could relate to somebody who was 16.
Right.
Were there things that I could pour into them? Were there things and experiences that I had that I could share? Yes. But that wasn't the dynamic of that organization, that church. So I think that's what's missing a little bit. That perhaps this 18 to 25 age bracket that we're dealing with now, and I know we have talked about in previous episodes about the characteristics of each generation and what they're looking for and what their attention span is and what their goals are in life and things like that. I think this generation, that 18 to 25, because we have someone in that generation, being our daughter.
Sure enough.
And her mindset is just different.
It is very much so. but see, I would like to say that, like you said, we have a daughter that's in that age bracket, and her son that is so very close that if we were to, I guess I had to try to take the parent head off for a second, and still in my leadership role in church mindset. If I were to listen to her, do I feel like she needs a little bit more guidance?
Right. I would say yes.
Yes.
But there's a way to do guidance, and I think you and I have talked about this, especially when it comes to our kids,
right?
That by the time we were 18, we had led fundraisers, we had led worship service, we had written business letters to ask for donations and ask for choirs to come and sing at our church. I had done all of those things being within the church, as a church youth leader.
But I think that's where these young people are coming from. That, hey, you've seen me do all these things. I've raised money. I've brought in more people. I've held meetings. I know Robert's Rules of Order. I've held the worship service. I even preached the word. I'm a licentiate. I'm almost about to be ordained. So you have all these different levels of achievement, whether it's within the church or out of the church. For some of these people who have gotten their master's degree by 25, or working on their doctorate by 25, so, or there's some that has even achieved being a doctorate and a doctor in ministry, but still are being perceived only because of age as this very young person that still doesn't know enough.
And I think that is the troubling part,
right?
That we as a people have to understand that knowledge doesn't always come from years, from age. Age doesn't always make you better. If I'm 80 years old, then I know more than you, and I'm better equipped than you.
Right.
At 18, again, or at 25, as you said, because that 25-year-old could have a wealth of knowledge from institutions or just from life in general, where the 80-year-old doesn't.
Right.
And on top of that, you have just the discernment of the Holy Spirit. That has nothing at all to do with age.
And see, that's where people, sometimes I get the sense that a lot of church persons are not operating in that. They're basing everything off of their own experiences. So, by 25, I didn't know who Jesus was yet.
Right.
By 25, I was worried about this and that. And, I don't need you to come in because you're not totally focused on this to mess things up. I mean, by 25, I was married. Like you said, married with a kid already. So, or at least a kid on the way. Kid was in a sack. It wasn't born yet by the time I was 25. But the that does not take away from my experiences of, like, as we stated earlier, doing all my church stuff, having worked in corporate America, fighting my way up, doing this, that, and the other. As you stated, purchased a house. Purchased, by the time 25, 2 cars by that time, so, what constitute us being adults and not just young adults or youth, where our voice or where the voices of the youth or young persons can be heard. What is that triggering point? What is that one thing that's missing? And I really do believe it comes down to age. Well, it's going to be, I think it's 2 things. Age and finances. Because the other part of that is that some people hang their hat on, well, I pay X amount of money, I should have the biggest voice. Go ahead.
And again, that is back to that flesh. That's back to that parading that around. And it's not biblically based at all. It's not biblically, sound that, Jesus hears from you better because you make more money or anything like that. So,
right.
Again, I think somebody who is 3 years old can bless, me just the way that someone who is 53 years old. Again, when it comes to finances, that's something different, but blessings come from so many different ways. And I think we as a church, we need to be careful on that. So that just kind of stirs me the wrong way. But go ahead.
Well, when you think about, when we're talking about just the financial piece, a lot of times the finances in corporate America drives who you are, right? And ultimately, what I mean by that would be, if you're looking at the structure or the hierarchy, the more money you make depends on your place within the organization, whether you're a manager, you're a director, VP, senior VP, C-level person. So when you think of it from that perspective, hey, if I have all this money, have this type of prestige. And I think that kind of trickles down, and I'm not saying that's 100% right. I'm just saying that's just how some things work out. And so I think that's a trickle-down effect to the church. And because we place so much emphasis on those who are tithing the most or bringing the most to a certain conference per se, that we give more preference to those, because if they close up their pocketbooks, then guess what? We can't do X, Y, and Z, or I can't do this.
I mean, that's the issue right there. You think because somebody's not bringing, a certain amount of money in, that you can't do something. If that person dies off, you think your whole ministry is going to fall through. No, right. God is able. Right. And I think that's, again, y'all have to get biblical with it. Like, y'all just get me bothered.
No, that's fine, Kyle.
So
let it out.
You have to get biblically sound. Like, stop doing this to each other and stop
right.
doing it to yourselves.
Right.
You're just allowing the devil to come in and steal from your ministry. Listen, it don't matter if you only have $2 that's coming in. God's going to bless that $2 just like he blessed those couple of fish and those couple of loaves of bread. Like, come on, he can do it. And if y'all pray and y'all fast and keep your faces in God, it'll happen. So what are you looking for? I guess is my question. If you're suppressing the youth, if you're suppressing the ministry, then what are you looking for? What is your goal? What is the end goal? What are we coming to church for? What is the church supposed to do? We're supposed to grow. And if you're suppressing the youth, then you're suppressing your growth.
And you're also suppressing what the possibility of the community around you. Because at one time, the church was the center of the community. But if you're no longer attracting, engaging with the young people who might be in that community, because as of right now, unfortunately, I think there's a lot of churches that have a lot of, and I can't remember the name of what the term is, but a lot of people that commute from longer distances because
transporters or something.
Yeah, I can't remember the name, but you have the church that's in this one hub, and then those young people at that time attended that church, and when they had grown, gotten married, had kids, got a little bit more money, they moved it further out, things like that, so but as you stated, eventually they die off. So what are you doing still with those kids that's in that community? See, unfortunately, I think when it comes to those persons that, oh yeah, I grew up in this church, this is my church, even though I might have grown up and moved away, it's still my church. And what encouraged me to be here, we need to still do. Not take in consideration what you did 50 years ago, the young people today have no clue about.
Or you're still trying to do what you did 50 years ago. So you was a church leader 50 years ago, and you think you're still going to run that, Sunday school the exact same way. It ain't working.
Well, I think, like right now, as we're going through this transition, this real big transition of the digital church. I do believe I'm coming across a lot of people who are stating that there truly are missing or have been missing this group of people, these viewers, these attendees, all these years for a long time. My conversation today with someone today was about they have 300 some odd people on roll, and they have maybe 100 to 110 people that come to church. Of course, some Sundays are a little more than others, right?
Prior to the pandemic.
Right. So now, not only do they have 100 people on their Zoom service, but now that they're actually streaming to Facebook, they're getting over about an average of 1,000 people watching, and never understand. And so now they can actually see it for themselves, the importance of that global ministry now, of embracing what the young people are doing and what they've been talking about all this time. So I think that, now is the time to really hear what they have to say, more especially because they are the ones that's trending, quote unquote, on TikTok. They're the ones that's trending, quote unquote, on Instagram. They're the ones that technically are making money or know how to make money through this digital age right now.
Right.
And I'm not saying you're doing it for the purpose of making money, but they know how to get noticed. They know how to spread the word about something.
I mean, the Bible says, Isaiah 11:6, a child shall lead them.
Right.
And I think it's sometimes, again, misquoted or pulled out a little bit differently. But, we can pull it out right now. And we can certainly say that in a time like right now, during this pandemic, during this shift from what was, as Maurice was saying, previously in other podcasts, that from the traditional church to something more non-traditional, as we talked about growth, and we have to kind of get out of what the pot we normally were in and stretch out a little bit more. This digital age is allowing us to do that.
Right.
And it's allowing us to reach to those youth. And, maybe things do have to change, and they're not looked at as youth anymore, but they're looked at as, people.
Right.
You know what I mean? Just looked at as people for whoever they are and wherever they are,
Right.
whether they're 17 or 16 or whether they're 36, whatever it is, whatever they bring to the ministry, allow them to operate in it.
Right.
Because we are the body of Christ, and we don't need a whole bunch of heads, because we be walking around looking crazy. We don't need a whole bunch of feet going all different kind of ways, but we need every little part together.
Right.
And, one of those parts are, as you're saying, the 18 to 25-year-old group, because they bring so much, have so much value, and what they look like today is a lot different than what it looked like when we were 18 to 25.
You're right about that.
They look a whole lot different. Like you say, hey, you were 25, married with kids. I don't know that many 25-year-olds today that are married with kids.
No,
or a kid on the way.
Lot.
And I don't even know that they have that mindset,
right,
or that as a goal.
Right.
You said, hey, when you were a teenager, your goal was to be married by what age?
23.
Right. So you had a goal,
right,
as a youngster,
right,
as a teenager, that you want to be married by a certain age. I had, in my mind, I didn't have an age, but I knew I wanted to be married and have a family, at least started by the age of 30.
Right.
I didn't want to do it prior, in my teens or my early 20s. And it kind of fell in within that, thanks, glory be to God. But again, our mindset was different for what we came up with and what we were taught and fed, whether it was because of media, what was on TV, the Cosbys, you wanted to be like that.
Right.
The Jeffersons, you wanted to be like that.
Right.
So what we were fed and what we saw and what we wanted to be and what our goals were a lot different than I think those who are 18 to 25 now. Like my daughter didn't have, and she didn't see any TV shows like that.
Right.
She watches them now.
Right.
But growing up, she didn't have those type of TV shows. She didn't have that type of images displayed in front of her. So those are just some things that I'm thinking of. But again, I think we have to understand the value of our children and the value of our youth.
Right.
Because God loves them. God, considered them special.
Right.
And, as we were meditating on this topic, some things came to me like, Jesus along his way stopped many, many times because somebody came to him and said, my daughter is sick. My daughter is dying. My son is sick. My son is dying. And Jesus stopped and made it his way to heal those people, to raise those young people up from the dead. He didn't push them off to the side and say, oh, you're not even able to do what you're supposed to do yet. You know what I mean? He was able to stop and bless them. And then those people grew up and became blessings to others, because of what Jesus did for them as youth.
Right.
So I think we have to be careful on what we do with our youth, to our youth. I remember when we were younger, they always say, oh, you're the youth. You're the church of tomorrow. And then somebody was like, no, they're the church of the day, So, and then we had certain Sundays we would do things. And now I see some churches incorporating the youth every Sunday. So, and that's how it should be. Again, we're the body of Christ. Like, you can't just say, oh, children's church, y'all go downstairs. I never really understood that.
Right.
I mean, I understand there's certain messages that can go further if you're within a group of your peers.
Mm-hmm.
However, I think that the messenger should deliver the message so that someone who is 8 or someone who is 80 can understand it.
Right.
You know, the few years that I was in the school of ministry, that's one of the things they taught us was that you need to, you know, have a message that everybody can appreciate,
right.
everybody can hear. So I just think we as adults, we as leaders in the church need to be careful on what we're doing with God's precious gift being his children. Yeah, I'm off my soapbox, my pedestal.
Well, here's the thing. It's once again, just like last week, I don't think there's no better way than to end this episode. You know, because everything that Kafa said is true, in my opinion. And if you have any comments, concerns about it, you want to have a discussion about it, you're more than welcome to hit us up on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at NoFruitPodcast. Or if you really want to, send us a message. We'll gladly have you on the show. We can have this conversation even, you know, at a deeper level.
Yes.
And I really, truly do appreciate these topics that are coming in. This is just it's just an abundance of information right now that's being put out there. But there's a lot of topics that we really need to address as the church as we continue to move forward, try to move the church forward, getting the gospel put out there and building disciples. I think all that we really need to tackle, and that's what this podcast is about. So again, if you like, share, subscribe, tell your friends about it. If you want to be on the show, hit us up on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And I thank y'all very much for tuning in.
God bless you all.
All right, y'all. Have a good night.
This week's episode has come to an end. But the fun doesn't have to stop here. If you have any questions, suggestions, or feedback, head over right now to Twitter and Facebook and like, share, and get involved. Join us next time.